Hey guys, and welcome back to Code&Gamology. On our previous video, we created a game where you can take a boat around and shoot at the open ocean. But since all you can do right now is shoot at the open ocean, there's really no point in this game. Well, today it's time to add some enemies. Okay, let's get started. First, we have to go to a sprite and choose the boat sprite. This is the sprite that we want being our enemy ship. We're going to make his size approximately 40 so that he's just a little bit bigger than the player himself. Now we need to add this distinct feature on the boat that makes it so this enemy can attack the player. Now in this backpack feature in Scratch, I have this little fire costume, and I'm going to take the fire costume and just put it on the boat itself. Now, if the player touches this fire, the player will take damage. And in order to make the player actually take damage, let's go to the player and create a variable. The variable is going to be player health. Now we can put it back down here. And at the start of the game, let's set the player health to 100. Now if the player touches, if the player touches fire from this little boat here, then he'll take damage. If we touch that little yellow, so you can decide if you want to make it yellow or you can make it red, anything part of the damage that the player is taking. Now if it touches the color red, which means this fire, then he should decrease the player health by -2. And we can let the player be invincible for 0.2 seconds. So now let's see what happens. Since this boat hasn't been coded yet, it's just standing in the middle of nowhere. But if the player walks here, you see the player health slowly decreasing. And he sets it to 100 at the start of the game. Okay, now let's add it so that if the player's health reaches 0 though, the player should just exit the game. In which we're just gonna say we take the variable player health, and if player health is less than 2, then the player is just gonna say player loses for 2 seconds. And it's just gonna stop off. And now let's try it out. And then you can go here and you can take damage, but if you fire at your enemy ship, nothing happens. That's because we haven't coded anything yet. Then you can just walk around and nothing will happen. Player loses, and it ends up the game. Now we have to add something to enemy 1. And so if the enemy 1 wins start, he should be hidden. And when he receives the message, summon enemy, then the enemy boat will travel to here, go to here, and create a clone of itself. Similarly, it's gonna go here to the absolute opposite, -181, and create another clone of itself there. I'm going to go to 219, which is the opposite of -219, and create a clone there. Then it's going to go to 181, which is the opposite of -181, and create a clone here, which would mean all the 4 corners there would be a boat. Now, realizing this, that he should be hidden, which means that all the clones will not appear. So let's make it as a clone starts, it should show. And it will always, no matter what, be pointing towards our player here. And now when it starts as a clone, similarly, it's going to glide to the player for 10 seconds, and it's going to delete itself. And let's see what happens. We have our enemy ships just closing on the player. But you realize that the boat's over here. They're upside down. How can we fix this? Well, we have to make sure there are 2 costumes now. And all you have to do is flip over this costume. Now this is a cool trick, because in Sailboat 1, you put it here, and because they're flipped over, if you flip over it again, that just makes them right side up. Now you realize that these ships, enemy ships, will just follow you around, but they can't target you, and they'll just despawn once they reach you once. Now on the backdrop, we're gonna say at the beginning, when it receives start, we're gonna summon 1 wave of enemies. And now you can actually play the game. You can walk around, you can glide, walk around, but if you shoot at an enemy ship, nothing happens. Okay, so now we need to add it so that the enemies will take damage if they are hit by a bomb. And that means that when I start as a clone, will show and forever if it touches the color of the enemies of our bomb here, which is that color. So if it touches yellow, then it's gonna delete itself. And which means now we can actually shoot at our enemies. Bam, 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 and bam. Okay, now that we can shoot at your enemies, we need to add a second class of enemies. An enemy that's stronger than this enemy. That's going to be our elite. The elite is a ship that's different from this. So instead of just doing this, the elite is going to have the fires, the same exact fires. Except that his fires are going to be like that. And so now we have an elite. We're going to delete all the code we have in our current code, because I just duplicated the enemy. And we're going to create a new variable, elite health. The elite health at the beginning, we're going to set the elite health to 100. And when it receives the message, summon elite, it's going to go to a random position, and forever, all it does is point towards our ship here. But what happens is it won't destroy itself until this ship or itself has been destroyed. It's going to forever point towards here and move 1 step. 1 or 2 steps, your choice. And this makes it so that this elite ship will just keep on chasing you. The only fact that it's hidden. And since it receives spawn elite, it'll just go whee! And it's going to be really hard to avoid it since it's like giant. You can set its size to a little bit smaller so that the elite is actually randomly playable. Player loses. So yeah, the elite goes way too fast. 1.5 might work. And you just slowly hunt down the elite. The elite is invincible currently though. We have to make the elite vulnerable. And the only way to do that is to say 1 star. Forever. If the elite is touching the color of the player's bombs, or if it's touching itself or one of its friends, which is, of course, that one color of yellow, then it's just gonna change elite health by -1. Or 2 or 3, it depends on how vulnerable you want elite to be. So now you can restock and shoot at the elite and fire, fire, fire. Now what's happening is that the elite hasn't been summoned yet, so fire, 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 fire. Now the elite's health is in the negatives, so why is it still chasing me? That's because the elite doesn't say that if its health is below 0, it doesn't say that the elite should kill itself. This elite's health is in the negative hundreds. So yeah, it's in negative 202, which is way too crazy. So here we have this. If the player health is below 2, the player loses. Now we're gonna say if the elite health is below 2, then it's just gonna say it's gonna destroy the elite, which means it'll go into hiding. So right now the elite will be like this. You can't shoot it. Its code never started. Now you can fire at the elite. Its health will just drop, and it'll vanish once it dies, and it's gone. Now, the fun thing about this game is that if you put your targeting ring around your player and you shoot, the player takes damage, which advises you not to shoot on yourself. Okay, now we have to add an even stronger enemy, the king. Now the king is basically an even stronger elite, except that it has 500 health. Of course, you can also make the king's health 1 million, 1 trillion, 1 quadrillion. It doesn't matter. Now, if the king's health is less than 2, the game ends. The king just says, say, player wins, and it stops the game. Now, when it receives the message summon king, then it's gonna go to a random position, change king health by this, point towards disable, move one step. But we have to make this recognizable. And the king is just a few million pillars of flame. That's how I did it. Which means that the king is just like whoosh, fire, ton of fire. And let's check the game. The player health is still crazily dropping. These two kings and the elite aren't even doing anything. They're just sitting there and chilling. Now we have to make you realize that the player's health was going down before the game even started. That's because it's a when start. We have to do when start the message. And since all these ships, they haven't been called yet. So we need to summon the enemy, summon the ships, and yeah. Summon elite, summon king, and forever we're gonna summon enemies. We're gonna summon the basic type of enemies, and it's gonna be wait 0.1 seconds or 0.5 or whatever. You need to decide a valuable time it takes for the player to defeat these enemies, and as 5 seconds. And let's see how the player defeats these. So you have all these ships going after you. You can kill the elite, which makes the game like way easier. Once the elite dies, the game is way easier, but then you have a king to worry about, and the king has like invincibility. Okay, thank you for watching, and please like, share, and subscribe. Bye!